So good to see you all again. I'm so excited for this time every week. We get the opportunity to chat to a wonderful scientist or expert or conservationist live somewhere in the world, and we get to chat about some of their awesome research projects and conservation programs going on. And today is no different. Introducing myself, I'm Lizzie Daly. I'm a biologist and your host for today. So thrilled to be bringing you yet again another wonderful guest all the way from Belize. But before I do, I should tell you that if you're new around here, this is an incredible episode because we're hoping to be bringing you live manatees along with our guest who's out on the boat today, currently in the beautiful red mangroves, who's going to tell us all about his fantastic work. So lots to look forward to. And of course, manatees. I mean, who doesn't love manatees? If you're like me, these mysterious, beautiful, herbivorous sea creatures that seem to float around mangroves and channels are just fascinating. And the Antillean manatee is a subspecies of manatee that you may know, floating around the waters in Florida. So we're going to be learning more about their biology, the ecology, and what our guest is doing to help protect the Antillean manatee. And let me tell you, we have a fantastic guest. We are going to be chatting today to Jamal Galvez, and he has dedicated his life to manatee conservation. He's been working with manatees since he was 11. He spends most of his days going to find a manatee, tracking a manatee, or helping protect the waterways that they inhabit. He has many, many different titles, but he's a conservation biologist. He's a program coordinator for the Belize Manatee Conservation Program, as well as a Nat Geo fellow, ARC as well. He's done so much, this gentleman, and he's actually coming to us live right now on a boat in the middle of Belize. So Jamal, hello, give us a big wave and tell us more about where you are. It looks beautiful.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am in Belize, in beautiful Belize. I'm literally on the Belize River right now. One of the most favorite places for manatees here, because manatees do need fresh water in order to survive. And they love the fresh, cool water of the Belize River. So I am on a boat out on the Belize River at the moment. This is an area that is known to have large population of manatees, so we're hoping that one or two of them may stop by so we can actually get to see them today.
And it's a beautiful place where you are, and of course this is a place where you've grown up. I want to talk more about the habitat and the environment and why it's important for these manatees here, but I guess I'd like to start by talking about you and what inspired you to get involved with conserving these manatees in the first place.
For me, I like to refer to it as my unusual walk to conservation. As a kid, I grew up in a small village just outside of Belize City called Gales Point, Manatee. Ironically, famously named for the manatees' presence there. So as a kid, I always known about manatees. I've always seen manatees, but to me, they were just manatees, like a bird or a cat or a dog. They were just there. And at that age, not knowing what endangered meant, I didn't know that they were in trouble. But as a kid, I would see this weird-looking boat go by my grandma's lawn. And it said manatee research, and I became curious, and we started asking questions, and my cousins and I would start playing manatee rescue on the lawn, and we'd fight to see who gets to drive the boat or who gets to be the doctor. But my interest had outgrown my grandma's lawn, so I strolled down to the dock where they live, and I approached Dr. Buddy Powell. And I said to him, Dr. Powell, can I come out with you guys? And he's like, kid, you're too small. I'm not sure if it was my I'm about to cry look that made him say, kid,
it's making me cry.
I know, right? And I went up with him that day, and I didn't even ask my grandma's permission, which had some consequences when I got back home. But we're not going to talk about that today. But being out on the boat with these real renowned scientists, Dr. Buddy Powell, Dr. Bob Bundy, Nicola Will, I learned so much about these animals. For me, like I mentioned, they're just manatees, and I learned that they're endangered, and endangered means that they're in trouble. And I felt, as the kid of this village, who best than me to want to protect and safeguard something that my village represent, my country represent. And I took the honor of trying to be a voice for the voiceless, try to speak for these animals who cannot speak for themselves. And it wasn't planned. I always imagined becoming an attorney or a judge, but nature and destiny had something else in store for me, and I'm very happy. I'm privileged, honored to be a voice for these species, and I'm very happy to be here to share with you guys today.
Best job in the world, I think. And just to kind of give a bit of context, because it looks fabulous around you, How many manatees do you get, say, passing you by? Before we actually went live, there were manatees that went past. Typical, isn't it? But there's about 2,500 manatees left in the wild in these areas. So tell us, what do you expect when you're going through these waterways, and how many do you actually get to see?
This is one of the places in the country that you can almost guarantee you're going to see manatees. Why? Because, like I mentioned, manatees are mammals. Though they can go between salt and brackish water, salt, fresh and brackish water, they do need fresh water to survive. So despite the distance they'll come back to the mainland to get fresh water, or maybe on a weekly basis. So it's a common place for them to come because it provides very critical resource for the species, and hence it's very important that we safeguard these ecosystems so that these animals can continue to survive. This, like I mentioned, is the Belize River. That not only has manatees, it has different species of fishes. We saw some dolphins coming in. We saw some tarpongs, many birds, beautiful red mangrove that you can see hugging the shorelines. But it is a beautiful place. If I was a manatee, I'd hang out in here as well.
Fabulous. I want to be there so badly. And for anyone that follows your amazing work and all the things that you post online, they'll most likely see images of you with very young manatees, these orphans. So tell us more about how that comes about and what your work entails there.
Well, having an orphan manatee is not our interest. Our goal is to keep manatees in the wild where they belong, for them to live a wild life and to grow up as a manatee and to enjoy the environment as a manatee. Having manatees in rehab is never our interest. Our goal is to try and put measures in place to ensure that these animals do not need to be protected, to ensure that people understand that their importance and people become stewards of the species to want to protect and safeguard these species. But unfortunately, these incidents do occur, and sadly, often as a result of human interaction or human cause. Most of them are anthropogenic causes. Many manatees that we see that are orphaned is normally as a result of their mother being killed, usually by boats or some other activity that may have influenced the animal to have become separated. But a calf manatee won't survive without its mother. These animals, these babies spend about 2 to 3 years with their mom, and to become separated from their mom at 2 to 3 weeks old is a lost case. And if we're not able to successfully rescue these animals, they'll eventually die. So it's very critical that we respond to these incidents, and we are very dependent on the public to call these incidents and to call. Most of the times we'll get a call and somebody say, "Oh, there's a baby manatee at my dock or in my canal or in front of my yard."
Really?
So go, yeah, literally, because manatees at a young age they tend to want to be next to something. So they tend to go next to dock, next to shoreline, next to something so that they can feel safe and not just out in the open. And so we're dependent on the public to call these information in so that we can respond to these incidents. But too many manatees we've seen have become stranded. When these incidents do happen, we'll get out. Our team would get out and we'll respond to it like you're seeing in the video right now. This is a young calf that was called in, that was swimming in circles. Manatees swimming in circles is usually because of their distress. So we went out and the calf literally swam right in my hands, and I picked it up and I walked it onto the shoreline. But while picking it up, I have to ensure it's very young, very fragile. You don't want to squeeze it, you don't want to squish it too tight. But you want to hold it firm so it doesn't hurt itself, but you don't want it to fall. So I'm just taking it. We're taking it to our truck where we put it on the truck to measure it to get a weight so that we can send this information to the rehabilitation center. So they know what to prepare: a big pool, a small pool. And the animal is very dehydrated and very hungry because they have been separated from its mother probably about 2 to 3 days. It had not more than 2 or 3 weeks old. So I'm administering some Pedialyte to try and rehydrate the animal as it's very dehydrated. And the goal is to try and transport it to the rehabilitation center as quick as possible so that it can get the care that it critically needs. And the long-term goal is to eventually return this animal to the wild where it belongs.
And for anyone watching this incredible footage, do get your questions in to Jamal live, and we'll try and get through some of those throughout this live, because I'm sure many people have a lot of questions. I want to talk about the biology of manatees, because that is also quite fascinating, and how they do change from kind of salt to fresh water. But have you found that these rescues and how you help these manatees, has that changed over the years? Has that increased at all?
Suddenly we're seeing an increase in manatees that are being injured. It could be also as a result of our large, vast public awareness. People know who to call. people are responding to incidents. Social media has a large part to play in these incidents as well. But the point is that we're seeing more Manatees strand, which isn't a good thing. One of the other incidents that we're seeing that are becoming concerning is that we're seeing dolphins causing Manatees to be stranded. We've gotten reports of dolphins trashing baby Manatees, dolphins separating mothers and calves. We've seen calves come in with dolphin scratches as if they're playing with them. We've documented dolphin and baby Manatee interaction. So that's another problem that animals are facing. And over the years, we've been, like I mentioned, we've been getting too many calves coming. I think there's currently 9 Manatees at the rehabilitation center. That's a record number. We've never had mostly not more than 1 or 2 for the year, but it's 9. That's a lot of Manatees to feed, a lot of Manatees to care for. And it requires a lot of attention. As young Manatees, it's like a young baby. Someone has to give it about 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 6, every 2 hours. It's a full-time job, and there are the rehabilitation center that does it. So our goal is to keep Manatees in the wild, that they can drink free milk from their mother and eat free seagrass, because it's expensive to rehab Manatees. And we don't want them in the rehab, we want them in the wild, being wild.
Absolutely. Look, we've got questions firing in already. I'm going to thread them out throughout this live, because I'm also hoping that later on we may get a glimpse of a manatee passing by. But the first question
Definitely.
Let's.
I have my team looking out, hoping that we see something. And if one comes by, I'll be sure to let you guys know.
Please do, absolutely. We've just had a question come in. How many people are working with Jamal there? So actually, who's with you? Show us who's with you on the boat, if you can.
Currently, my team today is Salisha Guy, who's one of the program assistant. Glenford Guy is also our assistant as well. So it's just
Fantastic.
3 of us here. The team consists of 3 of us here in Belize, but we're all a part of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, which is famously known for the dolphin winter with a prosthetic tail from the movie Dolphin Tale. But we also do work in other parts of the world, including Belize, in Cuba and other parts of the world. But in Belize, our team is a member of a group of 3 of us, and we're working diligently. We're very dependent on the assistance of volunteers who assist us. We can't do the work that we do without the volunteers that we have. So I'm very grateful for the support and volunteers that we have, which comes in very many different forms, from a 3-year-old to a 70-year-old man. So we have people in all different forms and walk of life.
Big efforts, and I'm sure as your career has gone on, people get to know you and your work, which is so important to have that kind of stable, safe place for these manatees. It's absolutely fabulous. Jamal, you must have so many stories. Can you tell us like a unique story or an encounter with a particular manatee that's really stuck with you?
One of the most interesting incident, one of the most interesting interaction I've ever had with a manatee is one of the first manatees that I've ever been in direct contact with was a rehab manatee by the name of Woody. That was in his last phase of rehabilitation, and I was fortunate to have been able to get into the pool with the manatee, which is very rare. We don't encourage people getting into the pool with manatees that are being rehabbed, as you don't want to influence them. You don't want to change their behavior, for them to become too used to human beings. But I got in the pool, and this manatee named Woody literally swam up to me and kind of like put his flippers around me, almost as if I'm giving you a hug. But it was surprising thinking these animals are here because of human causes, human threats. But yet they still find it within themselves to trust us human beings. And if it's showing me love, the best thing that I can do is just to hug it back and show it back love, because these animals are loved in many different ways. So that's something that I've stayed with me, something that I've remembered. I have tons of stories, but one of the ones that I felt moved me most, it was that interaction with Woody. Woody is a special manatee to me, and it will always be. All of them are special. For me, manatees they're not their individual. They have unique personalities. Duke like to do this. Twiggy likes that. Ramses likes. They're all unique and all special in their own way and has unique behavior. So some people may look at them as F23 as a number, but I look to them as an individual with a unique personality.
Fantastic. And to get to know them on such a deep level is just so brilliant. I'm fascinated by manatees. They are, as a species, super interesting, aren't they? And an order and a group. So firstly, are they mostly solitary, or do they, when they come to breed, they form these aggregations? Tell us a little bit more about the biology of manatees there.
Correct. Manatees are considered social loners, meaning that they don't really bond. They don't have BFF. They don't have girlfriends. My buddy, my OG, whatever term these guys are using these days.
I don't know.
The only bonding is normally between a mother and its calf, and it's the most critical bonding, as a calf will not survive without its mother. So we are always encouraging people to avoid approaching mother and calves whenever you're out on a boat. You don't want the cousin to separate. But only other times you'll see manatee congregate is normally at the warm water site during the winter in places like Florida. In Belize, manatees are more fortunate, as for manatees, it's warm all year round, so it's spring break for them in Belize all the time. They don't have to worry about the cold. But the only other place that you'll see them congregate is common places such as the river where they come to get fresh water, or a common seagrass bed where they're feeding, and when they're mating, which is the only time that I can tell you manatees are aggressive. It's like fighting for a parking. It's like fighting for a parking lot in New York City. Someone moves, the other one takes his place, and it's crazy. I mean, it's pretty wild. You have 20 males chasing after one female, and she doesn't get to decide which males she mates with. It's really, really crazy, but very interesting as well.
Yeah. I've had the joy of being face to face with manatees in the water, and it was really interesting to see how they behave, how they move, how they sleep. Do manatees sleep?
Yeah, I know, right? You wonder how they sleep if they need to come to the surface to breathe. This is very unique as well and very interesting. If you sleep like a manatee, you wouldn't get enough rest because you have to come up to the surface every few minutes to breathe. It's very interesting. Some manatees would rest at the surface. I guess those are the lazy guys because they don't want to go all the way to the bottom, have to come back up to the surface to breathe. But if they rest at the surface, they only need to stick their head up to breathe. But some of them will surface rest, some will rest in the bottom. It varies depending on the individual as well.
Okay, fabulous. And another question, do they have any predators where you are?
Predators, manatees don't have any natural predators in Belize. The only predator manatees do have, sadly, is human beings. The main threat that these animals face are humans, and they don't have any real threats in the wild. Crocodiles won't harm a manatee. We've had incidents of manatees being bitten by shark, but nothing to be concerned about. But mainly it's just human activities that cause these animals to be threatened.
So I do at the end a little bit later on, I want to talk a little bit more about responsible behaviour around manatees and the impact of us on them, because obviously it's such a big one. But out of interest, when you look for whales, you look for blows at the surface. When you look for crocodiles, you may look for eyes or reflection. What do you look for in a manatee? Do you look for a floating rock or something?
Some people like to say it's like a bowling ball in the water, because manatee has these two nostrils. And it kind of like if you put a bowling ball in the water and if it floats, all you'll see is just a round surface with two little holes. You also look for swirls. Manatees tend to like to roll. They use their flipper a lot to move, so they make balls in the water. But it varies. In the morning time, they tend to be very active. You'll see them doing barrel rolls sometimes. Sometimes they'll do a tail kick, something like the whale. But they're interesting as well in regards to their behavior. But normally you look for something that looks similar to a bowling ball sitting in the water.
Perfect then. Easy to spot. We've just had another question come in, a really nice one actually. How do manatees benefit the environment around them, and are there any special things they do for their ecosystems? And you talked about them eating seagrass, so how does it work?
Correct. Manatees are herbivores. They primarily feed on seagrass. They can feed on submerged and emerging vegetation. Sometimes you'll see them sticking their head up to grab a piece of mangrove as well. But these animals tend to eat about 9 to 10% of their body weight daily. So they spend a lot of time feeding, and the other times they spend sleeping. So manatees eat, sleep, repeat. But that makes them very critical to our ecosystem, as they're the only herbivorous mammals within our waterways in Belize. So they maintain the ecosystem in the sense that because they eat so much, they excrete a lot. The excretion acts as food for crustaceans and small fishes and other species within the ecosystem. So they manage to keep a balance within the ecosystem, and people do eat fishes as well. So manatees play an important role in ensuring that the marine ecosystem is stable and is in good condition.
So habitat's a really important thing to consider as well in the conservation of them. Absolutely fascinating. Quick check. Have we had any manatees yet? Nothing around so far? We've got all eyes out on the water.
No manatees yet. We have all eyes on the water currently.
They're keeping us waiting.
Hoping that something stops by. But as soon as one of them stops by, you guys will be the first to know.
We'll be there. Absolutely fabulous. Now let's talk a little bit more about your research, because it's not all kind of being out in the field either, is it? There's some work that you do with the tracking and movements of manatees. So how does that work?
Correct. Since 1997, we've been doing research on manatees in Belize. Belize has the longest longitudinal study of this species in the world,
Wow.
second to Florida. So since 1997, we've been following these animals to better understand them. The research is very critical as it provides us with the information that is necessary for us to understand their movement, understand their behavior, understand their ecosystem need, understanding how people are impacting them. And based on this data that we collect, it's used to inform conservation action, whether it's implementing no-wake zones or boat speed zones or designating a wildlife sanctuary. And it varies in many kind of ways. So the way it works is that we actually catch manatees to do a complete health check on them, similar to when you go to the doctor. The animal is equipped with a tag, as you see, and as you can see in the screen, that's the movement of one of the manatees that we've had.
Oh, wow.
These animals move around a lot, so with this GPS tag, we're able to follow the animal to see where it goes, understand how it's interacting with the environment and how it's interacting with other species as well. And
okay.
based on this information, we can designate wildlife sanctuary, protected areas, and all of those necessary things to ensure that they're protected.
And how far do they actually move? I mean, is it over big distances, or is it largely led by resources like food and breeding?
It's very interesting, as the females tend to be more resident species. They tend to stay in the system that we find them, while males, on the other hand, tend to be more puppyfoots. They tend to travel a lot, normally looking for female in estrus. So the males travel long distance to look for female. When I was younger, I was told about a manatee that was caught in Belize that went to Mexico. I thought he went to look for tacos, but from what I understood, he was there looking for female that was in heat. But males do travel long distance to look for female, while the females tend to be more resident and hang out in the area that they tend to be in.
Absolutely fascinating. And how do you go about attaching a technology like that, a tag to a manatee? I can't really imagine where you'd place it.
We have a specific boat designed for it. We have a well-trained team that have been doing it for many years. Always animal health, animal safety is priority. We're only taking this information as it's critical for us to put measures in place to protect them. The manatee, once it's on board, we have a tag which we attach to the animal's tail. This is a satellite tag.
Okay.
And basically, it's normally attached with a tether, and it goes around the tail of the animal, similar to a watch on your hand. This can float. It does go under it with the manatee. It doesn't prevent the animal's movement, doesn't prevent it from mating. It has been tested and retested. We've seen animals mating with it. We've seen animals do their normal behaviors with it. And these tags, each has an individual frequency, similar to the radio. If you want to listen to pop, you go to 96.5. You want to listen to soul, you go to 105.9. So this tag,
listen to manatees.
and the tag, I can track it on the computer via satellite, but I can also track it in the field using these equipments here. We have this guy over there with which is an antenna and a receiver. So if she turns the receiver on, you will hear the tag start to transmit.
Does that ever get complicated in thick mangroves? Because obviously they kind of go through very, very thick substrate sometimes.
Correct. The tag is designed to it's designed with a weak link, that if the animal does get caught or hung on something, it will break it and break free. So it doesn't keep the animal attached. It doesn't harm the animal in any way. It's designed that way to ensure that the animal is safe. It's also attached with corrodable screws that in 6 months, the screws corrode in the salt environment and it comes off the animal, so it doesn't stay on the animal for more than 6 months as well. So there are many safeguards in place to ensure the animal is safe during these times.
And obviously you're learning really fascinating things about their movements and across different sexes as well, which is just fantastic. More questions coming in. We've got a fantastic one. Oh, which one to pick? We talked about what manatees eat. This is a good one. Should the green algae be cleaned off the manatee? So tell us what it is first and why it's there.
Algae tends to grow on manatees because they're slow. They tend to grow anywhere where there's a slow moving. If there's a log in the water, algae is gonna grow there because it's not moving. Manatees sadly don't move a lot, so algae tend to grow on them. But it also depends on the environment that they're in. If they're in a brackish environment, if they're in a saltwater environment, you may not see algae, but you may see oysters on them because they're slow moving. It's not advised to remove it from them, especially in the wild. I don't think you want to, and it's definitely legal for you to do so in the wild.
Okay.
But in the rehab, sometimes they may clean them to administer medication or to administer an injection or something of that sort. But it's not encouraged to remove it. It's natural. It doesn't harm them in any kind of way. Also, it provides food for remoras. So it's a symbiotic relationship with the remora. Remoras, manatees have algae and remoras eat algae, and so they're taking the algae from the manatees, and manatees are getting cleaned up. So they already have their cleaners, so they don't need humans to clean them.
They have their own cleaners, and it's a slow-moving buffet for the remoras. Brilliant. Another great question. Okay, so someone who's 17 is watching. Hello, everyone who is watching. How are we able to help the conservation for manatees when I live so far from them? I'm just 17. Good question.
Helping manatees, there's no age restriction, age limit. There's no criteria, no educational criteria. You just have to want. The most important thing is the desire to want to help. And you don't have to be here to help. Sometimes people mistake helping with always writing a check or donating. But you can assist by simply sharing a post on social media. Perhaps it gets to someone that can assist in some sort of a way. It's basically telling the story. Today I shared with you information about manatees in Belize that they're endangered. Now you telling that story to someone is the most critical way you can help. Before you know it, that story have gone around the world. So tell the story of the manatees. From 17 years old, you can help. I started when I was 11. There's never too old, never too young. Tomorrow is always a new day, and always an opportunity to start over or to start new or to begin something new. And it doesn't necessarily have to be manatees. There's so much species in the world that needs to be saved. Find something where you live that needs help, that not a lot of people are helping. There's so much thing that needs to be saved and not enough people that are helping them. So I encourage you to find something within your area that you can assist with.
Totally agree. Being a voice is so powerful, and that's very much what you're doing as well. Being a voice for
we have
manatees.
A manatee.
Oh, we do. Oh, go on. Oh, this is so exciting.
Hopefully it comes to us now.
Okay. So these are Antillean manatees, right? So tell us a little bit about, there are subspecies of the manatees in Florida. Is that correct?
They're the subspecies is the Florida manatee. Similar, you can't really tell by just looking at the manatee.
Okay, so we're looking at the little, there it is. There it is. So tell us about what you're seeing, Jamal.
So I can see it just came barely to the surface. It's not fully out of the water, but I could see it at the surface. It's under the water currently. In the river, sometimes it's very strong current. Manatees are lazy, so the currents will be pushing them back and forth. So they tend to want to come into these places such as these coves where the current isn't as strong. Okay. So they can hang out here and relax and be peaceful and not have to be fighting the current the entire time. But in here, the river is some areas are more than 20, 30 feet. But in this little cove, it's very shallow, about 4 or 5 feet. So they can rest easily. They can feed on mangroves that are overhanging. And it's generally quiet in this little area, and boats don't tend to come into the small area here.
Yeah. And you had a thunderstorm, big weather yesterday. Does that alter their behaviors? Do they tend to head into these coves more, or?
Correct. If it's very windy and very stormy, they tend to come into these mangrove area. That's why we've always encouraged people to protect mangrove. They're not just important for human protection from hurricane and storms, but they're also protection for wildlife, including manatees, particularly manatees with calves. Calves are not able to withstand high wave action, so mothers will tend to bring their babies in here to shelter and bunker down to be able to survive a heavy storm or some sort of natural disaster such as hurricanes. No?
Okay, are we on the move? It looks like we're on the move.
Yeah, we're just drifting. We're just basically drifting and waiting for it to come back to the surface. And once it comes, hopefully it comes up to the surface more closer so that I can give you guys a better view of the
And it was an adult, I'm guessing. Can you tell the difference between a female and a male?
It did look you can't tell the difference between a female and a male. So oftentimes people will say, "Oh, the manatee is so cute." I don't encourage you to say that because it might be a male and might not want to be called cute. But the only way you can tell a manatee is if you can see the bottom of the manatee, the stomach area. The male genital opening is closer to the midsection of the manatee, while the female genital opening is closer to the tail. That's the only way you can tell if it's a male or female, because they don't sit around bows on their head and their heads.
Yeah, bows on their head. Well, I mean, I can't believe we have a manatee somewhere in those waters that you're looking at, everybody. There is a manatee floating around live. It doesn't get much better than that. Now, Jamal, keep an eye out for that. But I'm going to talk a little bit more. I want to talk more about the issues. You've touched on it already. You know, habitat degradation and collision with boats. Big issues facing our manatees. How much of a problem is it in terms of their survival long term as a species? They are endangered already, but I mean, are you optimistic or?
I'm always optimistic because I feel like there is hope. If we lose hope, then there's no hope, and then that's the last resort. And I can't lose hope on a species that I've committed my life to. I've committed to the manatees that I'm going to ensure that they are protected, and even if it means saving the last one manatee that's here, I'm going to be here to do so. But you're right saying that boats are the main problem to manatees in Belize. It's concerning as Belize has the highest population of this species in the world. Population estimated to be around 1,000 individual, but the death rate we're seeing continues to increase every year. And unfortunately, majority of these deaths are as a result of watercraft collision. So we've been working very closely with tour operators, boat captains, and the likes of people that are underwater to try and see how we can quill these threats, because it's very critical for the survival of the species. If we're saying that we only have 1,000, and every year the numbers of death goes up, it's definitely needs for concern. But I'm very hopeful and very optimistic, particularly because of the next generation. They're so excited about conservation, so excited to come out and see manatees, so excited to come and volunteer. And I feel that they may be able to continue push, continue to work, continue to ensure that manatees are safe in Belize. And that's one of my biggest goals, to ensure that I can inspire the next generation to want to be a part of conservation, to want to be a part of change. So when that I no longer am able to do this, which I don't think there's ever an end to it for me, but there's a next generation here to do it as well.
The manatee man is the manatee man for life, definitely.
Correct. Manatee man for life.
And just talking about boat collision specifically, I mean, it was big as well when I learned about manatees in Florida, and how you behave around manatees and in those waters is super important. So can you just explain a little bit more about what are the rules and regulations that you're trying to push for to make sure manatees don't get hit by boats?
Correct. Manatees, it's much easier for a boat to avoid a manatee than a manatee to avoid a boat. So what we do is to try and make it easier for boats, in the sense that our research leads to understanding of where the species is, where it's hanging out, where it's spending time. And we demark these areas with signage so that boaters know, okay, this is the manatee area, I need to go slow. We try to do patrols to ensure that they're adhering to these signs. We put out PSAs. But whenever you're on a boat, especially in shallow areas, especially in shallow seagrass beds, try to go slow or to avoid shallow areas, because if you're in a shallow water, manatee has no place to dive down and avoid the boat. And if you know an area is known as a manatee area, going fast within these areas doesn't help at all. It's encouraged to wear polarized sunglasses when you're on the water. It helps with the glare, so you can see much clearer. And it's encouraged that when you're in manatee areas to adhere to boating regulations that are put in place to ensure these animals are safe. And if you do hit a manatee, it's very, very critical that you report it.
Yeah.
Reporting it might be the difference in saving a manatee life or having us come out and remove a dead carcass.
Absolutely. It's about, I guess, having just a respect that, you know, you're in their environment, and they're not necessarily the fastest moving species, are they? So really, in a boat with speed, you have the upper hand. Fascinating work and really, really important conservation work, Jamal. We've got some more questions coming in. Obviously, you're very passionate, and I think people are maybe picking up on that. So what made you interested in this field, and how did you find your passion?
I wouldn't say I found my passion. I think my passion found me.
Yes.
Like I mentioned, my goal was to become an attorney. I always felt that I was a man of the law, to be in a courtroom. But learning about these animals and for the first time seeing a manatee out of the water, I've never seen manatees out of the water until I started to volunteer. Seeing them lay there so peaceful, so gentle, but yet so peaceful. and understanding that these animals are in trouble, they're in danger, they're afraid. It made me feel like I wish that I had some sort of superhero power that I can put them up and put them somewhere safe. But I can't do that. So I decided to dedicate my life to try and put measures in place to ensure they're protected. But not to protect manatees, but not to necessarily protect them, but to create an environment where they don't need to be protected. So that means changing people's behavior, changing people's mentality towards it.
And some of the threats you've spoken about, particularly, the protection of their habitat. Obviously, things are changing around the world. Are the global threats to manatees the same? Is a loss of seagrass really going to impact manatees on a global level?
Correct. Climate change is the biggest threat to the world, to even national security, including manatees. The changing climate, changing temperature, changing water levels will definitely impact seagrass production, and that will impact manatees as well. So these animals are similar. There's kind of fighting an uphill battle. That we have a lot of threats from humans, and they have natural threats. So I think if we can limit the amount of threats that we have, that we can control as a result of human activity, they have a longer surviving chance. But it's not just climate change and boats, it's destruction of coastal habitat, people tearing down mangrove, dredging seagrass beds to build mega cruise ports and marinas, destroying the very same environment that we call home, destroying the very same environment that these animals need to survive. Things such as pollution, plastic pollution is critical to manatees as well. Plastic finds its way on the seagrass bed. Manatees come by feeding, they ingest a piece of plastic, they can die as well. Poaching is a problem. People do hunt manatees. It is the reason why they're endangered in Belize, because they used to hunt them in the past. It is not as bad as it used to be, but it's still present. And we have things such as entanglement in fishing gears are also a threat to manatees in Belize. So these animals are facing many threats, but the main threat currently is the watercraft collision.
Which is something that we can change and we can control. So important work.
Correct.
A great question has just come in, and you've talked about some of these really kind of harrowing issues. But what are the difficulties in your field? That's something that someone's just asked. And I think from me to you as well, do you find it really difficult when you get to see, a manatee that's ingested plastic?
It is hard. It is hard, but also I have to ensure that I keep my composure. I have to keep the goal at hand. I can't, as much as I get emotionally entwined with my relationship with manatees and the individuals that we come across, I have to try and to stay strong. I have to ensure that I have the long-term goal at hand. I've lost the manatee, but the goal is to save the next 5, to ensure that the next 5 doesn't become that way. But it's difficult for anyone to see an animal with its back literally opened up from a watercraft. It is not the most pleasant sight, and it's not the most encouraging sight. And it sometimes makes me feel like I've made some grounds, and then you take 5 steps forward and then 10 steps backward. But I can't afford to fall. I can't afford to rest. I can't afford to let go of the rope, because we've made so much strides since I'm 11 years old. I've seen so much positive that has encouraged me to continue, that I can't make the negative make me crumble or fall. If I crumble and fall, then the species crumbles and falls. And that's not what I want. So you have to be very strong-minded, dedicated, and very willed. Very willed.
Absolutely. Every waking moment, I can imagine, is you're thinking of manatees. So would you say that's probably some of the biggest difficulties in what you do, or are there lots of practical issues as well?
Some of the practical, sometimes majority of the stuff includes humans. So most of my difficulty is normally entwined amongst humans. Though we've encouraged and inspired many people to change, there are individuals that are more difficult to change. There are individuals that may not see it as important. And when you hear them speak to that, it's very depressing, it's very discouraging to know that there's human beings that do find hate. And as we always say, we're not born with hate. People learn hate. And how can you hate an animal that have done nothing to you? How can you dislike something that have never harmed you in any way?
Yeah. Yep.
So those are the things sometimes that I feel that are barriers that are hard to crack. But still, I'm optimistic. Still, I speak to these people. Still, I reach out to them. I don't avoid them, because it's easy for us to try and convince the already convinced, preaching to the already converted. No, my goal is to preach to the ones that are not converted, that don't understand, that don't see the importance. So I spend a lot of time speaking to these individuals that feel that it's not important, because I feel like if I can make this one individual see the difference and why they should change, I feel that I've gained some critical grounds.
Absolutely. And I think you are making that change, Jamal. We've just had a really good question come in. How can we help Jamal is what they've written. So you are probably reaching those people right now. How can people sat on their sofas, sat in places where they've never seen a manatee, help you?
Well, they can help us first of all by staying informed. You can follow us on Instagram. You can look us at Clearwater Marine Aquarium. There are many different ways of how you can get involved with a different project. You can support, you can fund, you can volunteer, come to Belize and volunteer and assist. We've got volunteers coming from all over the world. You're welcome to Belize to assist with our efforts. You can share our effort. You can join another cause. You can protect your environment that you live in. And most of all, follow our work and stay in tune. That way you can know what's happening and you can find ways that you can be a part of our effort. We are always posting on social media. Clearwater Marine Aquarium. You can visit us at seawinter.org, www.seawinter.org, to follow our great work across the world, including in Belize. Fantastic
stuff. And you're obviously kind of very inspirational, very passionate and very dedicated. And I think that's what conservation really, really needs. We've got more questions coming in, but Jamal, I'm counting on you to bring us one more manatee before the end of this live. No biggie, but you've got about 5 minutes.
I know. We have all hands on deck. Everybody's looking right now, including myself.
The ball's on the water. Okay, another question. Do you track all the manatees in your area? Great question.
We don't track all of them in our area. Since 1996, we've actually handled 189 manatees. So 189 manatees we've done health checks on. Each manatee that we've handled we put a pit tag in their neck, like you put in dogs to identify them. So if it dies, we know who it is. If we catch it again, we know who it is. But we haven't caught all the manatees in our areas. And the areas that we normally do track manatees are areas that are presenting the highest threats, so that we can understand how these threats are impacting the animals. So we don't catch and tag manatees in areas that don't have threats. So it's only the areas that are massively developed, heavily trafficked, and causing serious impact to the species.
Otherwise, I guess you would have no real reason to track them. That totally makes sense. And your day-to-day, if you could kind of describe your day-to-day, or after this, what will you be going to do? Going through the mangroves, going to see manatees? What's your day-to-day?
My days are very difficult. My days are very difficult to plan. And that's the best part of my job, waking up not knowing what I'm going to do tomorrow, because I can end up in another part of the country doing a rescue. I can be taking off a dead manatee. I can be in a school talking to 3-year-old. I can be in a university talking to university students. I can be at a public event giving a talk. So for me, I had the best of all, because I can be in the office, I can be in the field. But my day-to-day always involves manatees, even on my day off. Because I spend time talking about manatees when I go to the market, when I go to dinner. I meet someone that wants to talk about manatees, and I never turn anybody down. I'm always, if there's a listening ear, I have a story to tell.
Fantastic. And just to kind of finish up, Jamal, is there anything else that you would like everyone watching to take away from this? What do you want your research and your role within manatee conservation to tell others?
Not just the manatees, but we're living in some telling times, some troubling times, and people need to really wake up and see the problems that we're facing, particularly the environmental problem, not just the manatees, but for the world and other species. And we all have a part to play in ensuring that these animals are surviving and that our environment is safe. Be reminded that this is where we live. This is our home, not just for wildlife, but our home. Who doesn't want to protect their home? That's ludicrous. But I encourage you to be a part of conservation effort, encourage you to be a part of supporting these efforts, and I encourage you to follow our work in Belize and to follow our efforts globally by following the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, staying tuned, staying informed, participate, share information on social media so that the world can see. I've told you stories, I've told you about manatees. Now it's your turn to go and tell those stories to your friends, your family members, and let people across the globe know about manatees in Belize and know about the efforts in Belize. And I'll be surprised that I meet someone from this live in Belize volunteering with me one day.
Yes, I'm sure you'll be flooded with them now. Well, I hope so. And I'll be there included.
Looking forward to it.
I tell you, this has been an absolute joy. Any more? I we'll get another manatee here. I mean, we've had one. I'm just being a little bit greedy, I think. They're such a beautiful
we're still looking, hoping that it's still around, but there's no sighting as yet.
I guess it's equally important to remember that this is wildlife. This is completely wild manatees. You know, it does what it wants. So that's absolutely fine with me. Jamal, you've been a real joy to chat to. Thank you ever so much for coming to us live from Belize. Absolutely loved it. It was wonderful.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, and we're happy to be here with you guys on the showcase. Belize has many different wonders. We're considered to be Mother Nature's best kept secret. And the only way you'll find out about the secret is by coming to Belize.
There you go. Go and support Jamal. Go and support work of the Belize Manatee Conservation Programme and learn all about what you can do to help manatees. If you don't know much about manatees, go and learn more about them. You know, they're such a vital species for our ecosystems and they're fantastic. So again, a massive thanks to Jamal for tuning in and a massive thanks to all of you as well for joining. I hope you enjoyed it and you got that glimpse of that beautiful manatee there from the red mangroves of Belize. And we'll see you again next week at the same time for another Meet the Expert. See you later. Bye.